Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Ancient Podcast. Tonight, let's sail across the Pacific without leaving your bed. Imagine lying on a wooden outrigger canoe, the stars above your only compass. The ancient Polynesians crossed thousands of miles of open ocean with no maps, with just their intimate knowledge of the night sky. How did they do it? And what can their celestial wisdom teach us about finding peace in the dark? We'll unravel their star charts like a lullaby, tracing the paths they followed to new lands and maybe guiding you to deeper sleep along the way. So close your eyes and let the waves rock you gently. Picture trying to sleep on a wooden platform the size of your kitchen table, rocking on open ocean for months. That was home for Polynesian navigators. Their double-hulled voyaging canoes carried everything: food, water, tools with just enough space for crew to stretch out between the lashings holding the boat together. You wouldn't call it comfortable by modern standards, but every detail served a purpose. The deck became their bedroom. Crew members slept flat on their backs, not for comfort but necessity. This position let them read the stars without getting up. They'd trained themselves to doze lightly, always half aware of the celestial movements overhead. If the Southern Cross shifted position in the night, they'd sense it without opening their eyes. Their bodies learned to sync with the oceans. Rhythm, waking naturally between swells to check their course. That constant rocking you'd find nauseating. For them, it was the best sleep aid imaginable. The creak of lashings and rush of water against the hull created a natural white noise machine. Modern sleep researchers would approve steady, predictable sounds help people fall asleep faster. The canoe's design amplified this effect, with hollow hulls resonating like wooden speakers. Night temperatures dropped sharply on the open ocean. Without blankets, crews relied on shared body heat. 15 people packed shoulder to shoulder. On deck wasn't just about space, it was survival. The warmth from neighboring bodies staved off hypothermia, while the press of limbs prevented anyone from rolling overboard in their sleep. They timed rest like everything else strategically. During calm periods between swells, half the crew would sleep while others maintained watch. The best navigators could gauge these intervals instinctively, grabbing 20-minute naps that left them more rested than hours of troubled sleep. It wasn't uncommon for veterans to function on 4 broken hours per night for weeks at a stretch. Shelter was minimal, maybe a woven mat overhead if rain threatened. But true masters often refused even this, preferring direct exposure to the stars. Getting wet meant nothing compared to missing a crucial shift in the night sky. Their skin grew leathery from salt spray, their hair stiff with dried seawater, but their internal compass stayed perfectly calibrated. The real magic was in their perception. Their maps glowed overhead every night. Polynesian navigators memorized hundreds of stars the way you might memorize the layout of your neighborhood. One wrong turn in that mental map, and they'd miss their target island by hundreds of miles. No pressure. The Southern Cross was their North Star, except it pointed south. They called it Hui Double, and it never moved from its position in the sky. When other stars shifted with the seasons, this constellation stayed put, acting like a fixed compass needle. Navigators could glance up at any hour and know exactly which way was south, even on cloudy nights when only fragments of the cross peeked through. But stars didn't just sit there, they moved. Polynesians tracked entire sequences called star paths where certain stars would rise in one spot and set in another. These weren't random patterns. They formed reliable routes across the ocean. A navigator traveling from Tahiti to Hawaii would memorize which stars rose over Hawaii's latitude and follow them like highway signs. Miss the exit, and you'd sail right past the islands without realizing it. The Pleiades cluster Matariki to the Mori was their seasonal alarm clock. When these stars appeared in the pre-dawn sky, it signaled the start of the safe voyaging season. Time to stock the canoes and set out. Disregard this celestial memo, and you'd risk getting caught in storms that could scatter your fleet like driftwood. Moonless nights didn't stop them. While most sailors would have huddled below deck, waiting for daylight, Polynesian navigators kept moving. They knew backup stars for every primary marker, like having spare keys for every lock. If clouds obscured the Southern Cross, they'd use the curve of Scorpius Tail instead. When Orion's belt dipped below the horizon, they'd switch to tracking the rising point of Altair. Their star compass wasn't just a list of bright dots. It divided the horizon into 32 sections, each marked by specific stars. Imagine slicing the edge of your vision into equal wedges, then assigning a star to each slice. As the canoe moved, they'd watch how stars entered and exited these mental partitions to track their heading. No instruments, just naked-eye geometry refined over generations. Modern navigators struggle to replicate this without cheat sheets. The Polynesian Voyaging Society trains for years to use these techniques today. Their Hakulia canoe has crossed the Pacific multiple times using nothing but traditional methods, no sextants, no GPS. When clouds block the stars, they resort to wave patterns and bird sightings, just like their ancestors. Certain stars doubled as distance markers. Navigators knew that when Sirius reached a certain height, they were halfway to their target. Others served as warning signs. If Canopus appeared too low in the sky, they'd veered too far south. Each star had multiple jobs in this celestial bureaucracy. They didn't just memorize static charts. The real skill was adjusting for the Earth's wobble. Over centuries, star positions shift slightly due to axial precession. What took astronomers millennia to figure out, Polynesians compensated for instinctively. Their oral traditions contained subtle updates, like software patches for an ancient GPS. Cloudy skies forced improvisation. When storms blocked everything, navigators relied on zenith stars, those directly overhead. These changed less with latitude, providing temporary anchors. They'd count wave intervals between lightning flashes to estimate distance traveled. Even in total darkness, the ocean's swell against the hull gave directional clues. Children learned these patterns through stories before they could walk. Mythological tales about the stars doubled as mnemonic devices. The demigod Maui's fishing hook became the Scorpius constellation. His failed catch explained why the hook never quite reaches the horizon. Every culture has constellations, but few turn them into practical navigation tools. The star compass wasn't proprietary knowledge different. Island groups developed variations. Hawaiians used Hokupa, Polaris for north, while southern groups ignored it entirely. Some paths overlapped, creating celestial trade routes. A Tahitian navigator could follow stars to Rarotonga, then switch to local markers for the final approach. What's shocking isn't that they did this, it's how casually they did it. European explorers arrived with astrolabes and logbooks, baffled that islanders could make landfall without writing anything down. The Polynesians' response was essentially, you needed instruments to figure that out? Yet stars alone weren't enough. The ocean itself held clues if you knew how to listen. The ocean didn't just carry them, it talked to them. Polynesian navigators could sense islands long before they appeared on the horizon, not by magic, but by reading the water's subtle cues. No satellites, no sonar, just centuries have accumulated. Knowledge passed down through generations. You wouldn't notice anything unusual if you were floating beside them. But to a trained navigator, every ripple told a story. Take swells, for example. When waves hit an island, they bend around it like water flowing around a rock in a stream. Navigators could feel these refracted waves through their canoe's motion. Slight shift in rhythm that signaled land dozens of miles away. Each island had its own wave signature, like a fingerprint. Larger islands created more pronounced disturbances, while smaller atolls sent out fainter patterns. They'd lie flat on the deck, hands gripping the hull, feeling for these changes through the air. Fingertips. Modern oceanographers confirm this work's waves refract predictably around landmasses, but Polynesians mapped it all in their heads centuries ago. Clouds gave away secrets too. Navigators watched for stationary cloud formations in an otherwise moving sky. Land heats up faster than water, creating updrafts that form puffy cumulus clouds directly above islands. These cloud nests often lingered even when the island itself remained below the horizon. The color-mattered greenish tints suggested lagoons reflecting upward, while darker streaks hinted at dense vegetation. At sunset, clouds over land sometimes glowed orange from fires or reflected light off shallow reefs. False positives existed. Some clouds just looked promising, but veterans cross-referenced with other signs before adjusting course. Birds served as winged compasses. Certain species, like the white tern, never strayed more than 40 miles from land. Navigators noted flight directions at dawn, and dusk birds heading out to fish in the morning pointed toward empty ocean, but returning flocks led back to unseen islands. Different birds had different ranges. Frigate birds might venture 200 miles offshore, while noddies stuck close to home. Navigators kept mental charts of which species indicated what distances. Spotting a land-nesting bird resting on your mast at noon? That meant trouble. It shouldn't be this far out, unless exhausted, suggesting you'd missed your target dot at night. The water itself lit their way. Phosphorescent plankton glow when disturbed, creating sparkles in the canoe's wake. Near islands, runoff from land carries nutrients that boost plankton populations, making the glow more intense. Navigators watched for sudden bright patches, unexpected flares, might indicate freshwater mixing with saltwater near a hidden shore. They also noted where the glow dimmed unexpectedly, which could mean deep channels cutting through shallow reefs. Even taste played a role. Veteran navigators claimed they could detect land by sampling. Seawater freshwater seeping from underground springs diluted the ocean's saltiness near islands. They'd dip a finger in, touch it to their tongue, and compare it to yesterday's. Sample. This wasn't foolproof, but combined with other clues, it helped. Floating debris told stories too. Coconut bobbing in open water might mean nothing, but a cluster of leaves with insect bites suggested recent landfall. Upstream of the current that wind patterns shifted subtly near land. Open ocean winds blew steadier, while coastal breezes grew erratic as they interacted with cliffs and palms. Navigators felt these changes on their skin, a slight drop in wind speed, an unexpected shift in direction. Sometimes they'd wet a finger to test airflow from multiple angles. Atolls were particularly tricky. Their low profiles barely disrupted winds, requiring extra attention to other signals. Modern science confirms these techniques work. Satellite imagery shows how waves refract predictably around Pacific islands exactly, as described in oral traditions. Marine biologists note that phosphorescence really does intensify near land due to nutrient runoff. Even the bird navigation checks out ornithologists' tracking data matches traditional knowledge of species. Ranges. The Hokulea canoe proved it in 1976, reaching Tahiti from Hawaii using only these methods. None of this was guesswork. Every observation followed strict protocols. Navigators cross-checked multiple signs before acting clouds plus birds plus. Swell patterns, never just one. False leads abounded, a lone bird might be lost. Strange clouds could form over nothing, but the system accounted for that. What's wild isn't that they used these cues, but how casually they relied on them. Modern sailors panic if their GPS fails. Polynesian navigators shrugged when clouds blocked the stars for nights on end. They had backup plans for their backup plans. Layered observation systems refined over millennia. Still, sensing the oceans. Whispers was only half the battle. You had to train your body to respond. They didn't need a compass. Their bodies were the instrument. Polynesian navigators trained themselves to feel direction through their skin, their balance, even their taste buds. 1 degree off over weeks at sea meant missing islands entirely. So they honed this sensitivity like a life or death muscle memory. You'd feel seasick trying it. They felt the ocean's whispers in their bones. The canoe's motion told them everything. Each swell pattern created distinct rhythms through the hull long, rolling waves meant open ocean, while shorter, choppy ones hinted at distant land. Navigators would lie flat on deck, eyes closed, reading these vibrations through their backs. The best could detect shifts so subtle, modern instruments would miss them. A slight change in the interval between swells might mean they drifted into a current pulling them off course. They didn't fight the movement. They tuned into it like listening to a heartbeat. Temperature gradients became road signs. Near islands, air often warmed slightly from land heat radiating outward. Navigators would wet a finger and hold it up, sensing minute differences in warmth between wind directions. At night, they'd notice cooler patches where ocean currents surfaced from the depths. These weren't vague hunches. They mapped these thermal layers mentally, the way you might memorize warm and cold spots in your shower. Taste played a role. 2. They dip a finger in the water and touch it to their tongue. Fresh water seeping from underground island springs created barely detectable sweet spots in the salt water. Fish tastes changed near land. Certain species fed closer to shore, leaving traces in the water. It wasn't foolproof alone, but combined with other cues, it helped paint the picture. Wind spoke directly to their skin. Seasoned navigators could distinguish between a steady trade wind and the erratic breezes that curled around distant islands just by how it felt on their faces. They'd note shifts in humidity. A sudden dampness might mean rain over land miles away. Some claimed they could sense approaching storms hours in advance from tingling in their scalp hairs. Modern meteorologists would call this impossible, yet the Voyagers' survival rates proved otherwise. Their inner ears became precision tools. Without visual references on cloudy nights, they'd rely on equilibrium to track the canoe's angle through waves. A trained navigator could tell if they drifted off course just by how the tilt of their head changed during turns. Dizziness wasn't a problem they'd conditioned themselves to ignore through years of practice. Children started this training young. Games involved blindfolded balance tests on rocking canoes. Teens learned to estimate speed by trailing a hand in the water and counting pulse beats between wave crests. By adulthood, their bodies had calibrated to the ocean's rhythms like human sextants. European explorers wrote in disbelief about navigators who could point to distant islands, while blindfolded, guided solely by the canoe's motion beneath. Them, dead reckoning calculating position without instruments required brutal mental math. They'd track speed by memorizing how certain wave frequencies felt at different velocities. Time was measured in breaths. Veterans knew exactly how. Many inhales matched an hour of paddling. At night, they'd count star movements against the rhythm of their own heartbeat to maintain course. One miscount, and they'd wake up hundreds of miles off track. Modern attempts to replicate this show how hard it is. The Polynesian Voyaging. Society trains recruits for years just to approximate these skills. Even with GPS as backup, most beginners can't detect the subtle cues veterans spot instantly. Scientists studying these techniques found navigators. Brains light up differently in MR as their sensory processing regions are hyper-developed. Like musicians with perfect pitch, the real trick was integration. They didn't just feel one. Thing at a time, they processed wave rhythm, wind direction, temperature shifts, and taste changes simultaneously, updating their mental map constantly. It's like juggling blindfolded while solving equations in your head. Break concentration for a minute, and the whole system collapses. This physical awareness had unexpected benefits. Navigators reported sleeping better at sea than on land there. Bodies so attuned to the ocean's rhythms that they rested more deeply amidst the movement. Modern sleep studies suggest why. The constant gentle rocking synchronizes with human sleep cycles better than stationary beds. Their version of counting. Sheep was tracking wave intervals until drowsiness took over. The contrast with modern navigation is stark. GPS gives coordinates, but severs the connection between body and environment. Polynesian wayfinders didn't just know where they were, they felt it in their muscles, their skin, their sense of balance. That intimacy with the natural world can't be downloaded as an app. This sensitivity didn't come from natural talent. It was beaten into them through years of relentless training, cold mornings spent memorizing wave patterns, nights blindfolded on choppy seas learning to trust their skin over their eyes. The ocean was their teacher, and its lessons were unforgiving. Fail to listen, and you join the bones resting beneath the waves. Yet this brutal schooling produced something remarkable. Humans who could cross thousands of miles of open ocean using nothing but their bodies as guides. No screens, no batteries, just flesh and bone calibrated to the Earth's movements with precision that still baffles engineers. The training to achieve this? That's where things got really intense. Becoming a master navigator wasn't something you'd sign up for lightly. The training broke most who attempted years of pre-dawn wake-ups, endless memorization drills, and tests that pushed human limits. These weren't schools in our sense, but sacred knowledge centers called Wari Wananga, where navigation secrets passed orally from one generation to the next. Forget textbooks. Everything lived in chants, stories, and the instructor's memory. Students started young, often as children. Their first lessons involved simple star patterns told through bedtime stories. By adolescence, they'd advance to stick. Charts wood framed strung with shells that represented islands and currents. These weren't maps to follow, but memory aids for the real knowledge locked in their mentor's head. You'd spend months reciting star paths until you could visualize the night sky with your eyes closed. One mistake in these chants meant extra hours kneeling on coral gravel as punishment. Dream interpretation formed another core skill. Navigators believed nighttime visions carried practical clues. A dream of crashing waves might warn of coming storms, while dreaming of specific birds could signal nearby land. Trainees kept dream journals, learning to distinguish meaningful symbols from random noise. Some instructors would abruptly wake students at night, demanding immediate interpretations of half-remembered dreams. Fail to answer coherently, and you'd spend the next day bailing water from a leaky training canoe. The physical tests separated hopefuls from candidates. Blindfolded students would stand in rocking canoes, describing wave patterns and wind shifts based solely on body sensations. Others floated in dark caves for hours, identifying simulated ocean sounds played through hollow logs. The most dreaded exercise? Being set adrift at night in a small craft with instructions to find shore using only wave feel. Many washed up miles down the coast, humiliated but alive. A few didn't return at all. Night navigation drills were brutal. Students would paddle beyond sight of land, then be told to maintain course, while instructors created distractions. Sudden loud noises, unexpected shoves, even food temptations. The lesson? Focus or die. Some schools used hallucinogenic plants to induce disorientation, forcing trainees to navigate impaired. The logic was harsh but sound. If you could find your way while drugged, sober sailing would feel effortless. Weather prediction tests involved standing barefoot on hot rocks for hours, learning to forecast storms by subtle pressure changes in their joints. Others sat chest-deep in tidal pools, timing breaths to incoming swells until their bodies sensed with the ocean's rhythm. There were no shortcuts. You either developed the sensitivity or washed out. Many did. Historical records suggest only 1 in 10 apprentices completed the full training. The final exam was straightforward. A solo voyage to a distant island and back. No instructions, no rescue boat trailing discreetly behind. Just you, the ocean, and everything you'd supposedly learned. Some returned weeks later, sunburned but triumphant. Others were never seen again. Those who succeeded earned more than a title. They became living libraries, repositories of knowledge that might save entire communities during migrations or disasters. Social status came with brutal responsibility. Master navigators weren't allowed normal lives. They followed strict diets to maintain sensory acuity. No alcohol, certain foods, or even sex before voyages. Their sleep schedules remained rigidly adapted to celestial cycles year-round, whether at sea or not. One slip in memory could doom an entire crew, so daily recitation drills continued indefinitely. Forget retirement. You navigated until your body failed, or the ocean took you. The knowledge wasn't democratically shared. Certain families guarded navigation secrets for generations, marrying strategically to preserve bloodline memory. Outsiders who tried learning independently risked execution if caught. These skills were clan property, not personal hobbies. Even among initiates, knowledge was doled out piecemeal. A navigator might know star paths to 5 islands, but not the 6th until proving loyalty over decades. Modern recreations prove how effective this system was. When the Hakulia canoe sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976, using only traditional methods, skeptics were stunned. The vessel arrived within miles of its target after 34 days at sea. No charts, no instruments. The navigator? A Micronesian named Mau Pialuk, one of the last traditionally trained masters alive. His success sparked a revival, but the old ways are still dying. Today's students mix GPS with star paths. Nobody endures the full original curricula. That training wasn't cruelty for its own sake. When your canoe is a speck in thousands of miles of open ocean, when one error means watching your family starve, when no rescue comes because nobody knows where you drifted, that's what these methods prepared navigators to face. Every scar, every nightmare chant, every humiliation had purpose. Yet technical knowledge alone didn't guarantee survival. Before any voyage came preparations no instrument could measure. Before setting sail, Polynesian navigators prepared their minds like athletes prepare their bodies, except failure meant more than losing a race. They saw the ocean as alive, unpredictable, temperamental. You didn't conquer it. You learned to work with it, and that started with respecting its power. This wasn't mystical thinking, it was practical survival. Disrespect the sea, and it would kill you just as surely as forgetting to bring water. Offerings came first. Navigators would present gifts to ocean gods and ancestors, precious shells, sometimes drops of their own blood. These weren't Empty gestures. The logic was straightforward. The ocean held all the power, so asking nicely improved your odds. Specific deities governed different aspects. Dangaroa ruled the deep. Hina controlled the moon's pull on tides. Ignore them at your peril. Families with lost sailors took these rituals especially seriously. They'd seen what happened when the spirits felt neglected. Dreams dictated timing. Trainees spent years learning to distinguish random nighttime brain noise from actual messages. A navigator might delay departure for weeks, waiting for the right dream, maybe seeing a particular bird flying east, or watching waves break calmly against an invisible shore. They tracked dream cycles like we track weather forecasts. Some kept lunar calendar dream journals, noting patterns across months. False signs existed, though young navigators often saw what they wanted rather than what was true, which is why elders reviewed their interpretations. Meditation sharpened their senses. Before voyages, navigators would sit for hours in silence, tuning out everything but the wind on their skin. This wasn't relaxation. It was active calibration. They'd practice holding mental images of star paths while ignoring distractions, like someone today might practice math proofs with the TV on. The best could maintain this focus for days, slipping into trance-like states where time dilated. Modern brain scans show similar patterns in expert meditators, reduced activity in areas that process distractions, heightened awareness in sensory regions. Purification rituals might seem strange today, but they served practical purposes. Days of fasting cleared the mind hunger, sharpened certain types of focus. Abstaining from sex prevented pregnancy complications mid-voyage. Restrictions on certain foods reduced stomach troubles at sea. Some groups practiced ritual vomiting to empty themselves before voyages unpleasant, but better than seasickness. Later, every rule had roots in real ocean survival needs, encoded into spiritual practice over generations. Tools received blessings too. Canoes weren't just vessels, they had souls. Builders performed ceremonies when selecting trees, asking permission before cutting. Launch ceremonies involved chanting the canoe's lineage, which forest it came from, which ancestors' designs inspired it. Sails got special treatments to wake them up before voyages. Neglect these steps, and your canoe might decide to capsize at the worst moment, or so the belief went. Either way, the rituals ensured meticulous pre-voyage checks. Nobody blessed a leaky hull. Families participated in send-offs. Crew members would receive necklaces with protective charms, shark teeth, carved coral, bundles of sacred leaves. Mothers pressed foreheads to their sons' chests, transferring courage through breath. Children offered last-minute gifts, maybe a favorite shell for luck. These weren't sentimental gestures. They reinforced communal responsibility. A navigator carrying his sister's shell would fight harder to survive, because failing meant more than personal death. It meant failing everyone who believed in him. Music set the rhythm. Chants weren't entertainment. They encoded navigation data in meter and rhyme. Some listed star sequences. Others timed paddle strokes to wave intervals. Many navigators refused to sail without their chanters. Believing the rhythms helped synchronize crew movements with ocean patterns. Scientists studying traditional Polynesian paddling crews found their stroke timing matched natural wave frequencies better than non-chanting groups. Whether through mystical alignment or just keeping everyone in sync hardly matters. It worked. Final. Checks balanced pragmatism and spirituality. Navigators inspected supplies while reciting prayers over each bundle. They'd test lashings while whispering assurances to the canoe's spirit. Everything was checked once for physical soundness, once for spiritual readiness. Skeptics might call this superstition, but the system produced results. European ships vanished constantly despite their rational approaches. Polynesian canoes reliably found specks of land across thousands of miles. This mental preparation had tangible effects. Studies of modern recreations show traditionally trained navigators maintain focus longer under stress than conventionally trained sailors. Their ability to ignore discomfort, hunger, thirst, exhaustion mirrors special forces operatives more than civilian mariners. This wasn't innate. It was drilled through years of conditioning both body and mind to see hardship as normal, even necessary. The ocean didn't care about good intentions. Before compasses or GPS, survival demanded total commitment, not just skill, but an almost religious devotion to the craft. Polynesian navigators didn't just memorize stars. They integrated with them, becoming extensions of the natural systems they relied on. That integration started long before departure, in quiet rituals that modern explorers might dismiss, until they're the ones drifting lost in an indifferent sea. Once prepared, navigators faced their truest test, not the techniques or rituals, but the first stretch of open ocean where land vanished completely. That initial darkness sorted real masters from mere students. Some broke immediately, begging to turn back. Others found their training clicked into place, the chants and dreams, and discomforts suddenly making sense as the horizon emptied behind them. The first night at sea broke many would-be navigators. Picture this: you've trained for years, memorized every star path, endured every test. Then land disappears behind you, and suddenly it's just your canoe under an endless black sky. No safety nets, no second opinions. This was where theory met reality, and reality didn't care how many chants you'd memorized. Some novices cracked immediately, begging to turn back. Others found their training clicked into place, like a final puzzle piece snapping home. Start by finding their guiding star, maybe the Southern Cross for heading south, or Orion's belt, pointing toward familiar waters. But stars move, so they needed backup markers for when their primary guide slipped below the horizon. Experienced navigators could name 4 alternative stars for every primary one, switching between them like changing lanes on a highway. You couldn't afford to lose focus. A single missed transition meant drifting off course without realizing it. Breathing kept them grounded, literally. They'd time inhalations with incoming swells, exhales with the troughs between waves. This wasn't some mystical practice. It prevented seasickness and synced their mental rhythm with the ocean's pulse. A panicked person breathes erratically. A focused one matches their surroundings. Modern sailors used breathing techniques for storm survival, but Polynesians baked it into their daily routine from day one. The vastness either destroyed you or sharpened your senses. With no landmarks, your brain screams that you're adrift even when you're perfectly on course. Some navigators described feeling like they were standing still while the stars moved around them. A terrifying illusion that could make you second-guess every decision. Veterans learned to weaponize this emptiness, letting it strip away distractions until only the essential cues remained. They spent hours flat on their backs, not sleeping reading. The deck became their observation platform, their bodies acting as human inclinometers. By noting subtle shifts in how stars moved across their field of vision, they calculated latitude without instruments. If a star rose higher than expected, they drifted north. Lower meant south. They didn't need precise degrees, just enough to correct course before errors compounded over days. Panic was the real enemy. You might know every constellation by heart, but when the sky swirls above you and waves slap the hull unpredictably, knowledge isn't enough. That's where the training kicked in. Decades of instructors screaming corrections, blindfolded drills, forced sleepless nights. The ocean didn't care about your fear. It only responded to competence. Successful navigators described their first night as a curtain, lifting suddenly, understanding how all the disjointed lessons connected. Night sounds became their lifeline. The creak of lashings indicated hull stress. Splashes marked wave patterns sharp. Cracks meant steep waves from one direction. Duller sloshes suggested cross swells. They'd close their eyes and nap the ocean's texture through noise alone. Modern sailors rely on radar. Polynesians used the acoustic shadows of waves, refracting around distant islands. They couldn't yet see dot-star sequences form their highway. Lanes. Instead of following one star, they tracked chains. As Altair set in the west, Fomalhaut would rise in the east, creating a mental relay across the sky. Break the chain, and you drift into navigational dead space. Veterans could maintain these sequences for days, their minds acting like autopilots, even while dozing. Some described it as dreaming awake, their subconscious continuing to monitor star movements, while conscious thoughts wandered. Clouds tested their adaptability. When overcast skies blocked constellations, they switched to zenith stars, those directly overhead that stayed visible longest. No stars at all? Then it was wave patterns, wind angles, even the taste of the air. Their training covered every possible failure mode, but the first night taught whether they could actually apply it under pressure. Many couldn't. The ones who did earned the right to keep going. Sleep wasn't sleep as we know it. They'd nap in 20-minute bursts, waking automatically to check their bearings. Their bodies adapted to this polyphasic rhythm over time. Modern studies show similar patterns in solo sailors today. The difference? Polynesians couldn't set alarms. They relied on internal clocks tuned by years of harsh conditioning. Sleep just enough to function, never enough to lose situational awareness. Not by dawn, the real test began. Had they held position through the night or drifted into oblivion? Veterans knew before sunrise subtle changes in swell direction or bird activity gave it away. Novices often didn't realize they were lost until land failed to appear or expected days later. But those who survived that first night passed the ultimate filter. The open ocean had judged them worthy, or at least not immediately unworthy. It wasn't heroics, just grinding persistence. Minute corrections every hour, constant cross-checking of cues, resisting the urge to assume anything. The romantic version has navigators soaring across waves like demigods. The reality was more like a chess match where every move took hours, and mistakes took days to reveal themselves. The first night proved you could play that game without cracking. Landfall would come much later, if at all. But surviving sunrise after that initial darkness meant something profound. You weren't just reciting knowledge anymore. You'd become part of the system, another current in the ocean's rhythms. And like those currents, you'd keep moving forward, one star at a time. As weeks passed without land, routine solidified. The shock of endless water faded, replaced by a different kind of challenge, not sudden terror, but slow, grinding monotony. The ocean stopped feeling infinite and started feeling like a workplace. That's when the real voyage began. Days blurred together when you couldn't see land. No trees to mark seasons, no tides to break routines, just endless water under endless sky. The Polynesians didn't fight this monotony. They weaponized it with rituals sharper than any blade. You'd think storms would be the deadliest threat, but tedium killed just as efficiently, dulling reflexes, eroding willpower. Their solution? Turn survival into clockwork. Water rationing governed everything. Each dawn began with the navigator, distributing the day's share, maybe half a coconut shell per person. You'd swish it around your mouth before swallowing, savoring imaginary wetness. Thirst haunted them constantly, but the rules never bent. Crewmates watched each other like hawks. Steal an extra sip, and you'd answer to 15 dehydrated men. Some canoes kept fresh water in hollowed-out bamboo tubes lashed beneath the deck cooler. There, less likely to evaporate. But mostly they relied on discipline. The navigator drank last, proving his worth through self-denial. Stargazing shifts rotated like shifts in a factory. 3 crew members always monitored the Sky One tracking zenith stars, another watching horizon risings, a third cross-checking. Both. Every 2 hours, fresh eyes replaced tired ones. The night sky became shifts in a celestial mine, each team digging for directional clues. Veterans could spot star movements modern astronomers need telescopes to detect, not because their eyes were better, but because they knew exactly where and when to look. Miss a star's transition by minutes, and you drift miles off course. By dawn, fishing wasn't leisure, it was math. They calculated catch rates down to the bone. How many fish per day to supplement the shrinking rations without depleting local schools? Lines trailed behind the canoe constantly, hooks baited, with leftovers from previous catches. Every fish was dissected for clues. Stomach contents revealed nearby baitfish migrations. LIV, ER size indicated water temperature changes. Even the scales told stories. Heavier mineralization meant currents were shifting toward land. Nothing was wasted. Guts became bait. bones fashioned into tools, skin stretched over compass cases. Nightfall brought mandatory rest cycles. Half the crew slept, while others maintained watch, switching every 4 hours. Sleeping spots were assigned by seniority, best spots near the center, with a rocking felt gentlest. Newcomers stuck near the edges, where waves slapped hardest. They slept in shifts even when exhausted, a system modern submariners would recognize. The worst punishment? Being denied sleep rotation for sloppy, stargazing, forcing you to stay alert for 20 straight hours while teammates snored beside you. Social hierarchies flattened at sea. The navigator's word was law, but even he hauled fishing lines when needed. Young boys scrubbed decks. Elders got first pick of sleeping mats. Mid-ranking crew balanced the worst chores. Disputes were settled immediately. No room for grudges when survival depended on cooperation. Punishments were pragmatic. Extra bailing duty, reduced rations, or worst case, being tied to the outrigger during squalls. Nobody was thrown overboard. Every pair of hands mattered too much. Timekeeping relied on the body's clock. Without hourglasses, they tracked days by salivary thickness. Your mouth got drier as water rations dwindled. Moon cycles were measured by callous shedding hands. Toughened during wet seasons, softened during dry spells. Even bowel movements became calendars. Diets changed so predictably that veterans could estimate dates by gut discomfort. Provisions dwindled visibly. Day 10. Less taro mash in your ration. Day 20. Coconut milk replaced with seawater diluted. Paste. By week 6, meals were ceremonial. A single shared fish head, gnawed methodically. Yet morale held through brutal games. Crews staged mock battles with fishing spears, told obscene jokes about rival islanders, sang improper versions of sacred chants when the navigator wasn't listening. Laughter wasn't optional. It staved off despair. The navigator's toughest job? Concealing doubt. When supplies ran critically low, he'd announce surprise feasts, suddenly finding extra rations hidden beneath deck planks. These were psychological rations more than physical ones. 2 bites of dried breadfruit, presented as a celebratory banquet. Crews pretended to believe him, both sides playing the game, because the alternative was panic. Discipline turned chaos into routine. The same wave that capsized canoes became an alarm clock. Veterans woke seconds before crests hit, racing automatically. Hunger pangs were ignored like minor itches. Even hallucinations were incorporated. Seeing non-existent birds became a game. Point out the dumbest mirage today. What would drive modern sailors mad? They'd normalized through ruthless repetition. Yet the ocean always had surprises. Just when routines felt eternal, the waves would shift in ways no chant could explain. Clouds would gather without warning. Birds appear where none should be. The navigator's real skill wasn't following rules. It was knowing when to break them. But that realization came later, after weeks of grinding sameness had etched its lessons into your bones. And then when the monotony was absolute, when even the navigator's assurances rang hollow, the first undeniable sign would appear. Maybe a suspicious cloud formation, perhaps an odd ripple in the swell. Suddenly, survival wasn't abstract anymore. land existed again. The game changed instantly. When clouds swallowed the stars, Polynesian navigators faced their ultimate test. Storms didn't just obscure landmarks. They erased the entire sky, leaving crews blind in swirling chaos. Rain turned sails into wet concrete. Waves tossed canoes like toys. Panic was the real enemy one wrong decision, and you'd get thrown off course by miles, with no way to correct until the storm passed. Veterans treated storms like final exams, where failure meant death. Wave memory became their last lifeline. Navigators spent years learning specific swell patterns for each route. The way waves rolled toward Tahiti felt distinct from those near Hawaii. During storms, they'd lie flat on deck, hands gripping the hull, feeling these patterns through. Vibrations. A trained navigator could detect if they drifted by subtle changes in how waves hit the canoe. Modern sailors rely on gyroscopes. Polynesians used their spines as inertial guidance systems. It wasn't perfect, but it beat spinning in circles until you starved. Every crew member got tied down before the storm hit. Ropes secured them to crossbeams, loose enough to move, but tight enough to prevent washing overboard. Novices often tied clumsy knots that rubbed raw spots in their skin. Veterans knew exactly how much slack to leave too much, and you'd get battered against the hull. Too little, and you couldn't bail water. Hands stayed free for emergency tasks, but waists and ankles stayed anchored. Some added extra lashings around their chests during extreme weather. Gambling that bruised ribs were better than drowning rain on sails became their replacement compass. Polynesian sails were woven from pandanus leaves, which made a distinct drumming sound in downpours. Navigators memorized how this sound changed with wind direction. Rain hitting the left side meant the wind had shifted east. They'd close their eyes and turn their heads like satellite dishes, tracking shifts in the auditory landscape. Modern experiments show these sails really do create directional sound patterns, though few today could interpret them. During the worst storms, this was often their only clue for hours. The canoe itself gave warnings. Lashings creaked differently. Under storm stress, high-pitched squeaks meant joints were over-tensioned, while dull groans signaled impending failure. Navigators would send crew crawling along the deck mid-storm, checking critical bindings by touch. One broken lashing could unravel the whole vessel, so repairs happened immediately regardless of conditions. Builders deliberately used flexible woods, like breadfruit that groaned before snapping, giving crews precious minutes to react. Breathing techniques kept panic at bay. Bedtime inhalations to wave crests, exhaling through trough, a rhythm that prevented hyperventilation while synchronizing with the ocean's pulse. Some whispered navigation chants under their breath, not for magic, but to regulate oxygen intake. Others focused on pressure points, pressing thumbs into their sternums to steady heart rates. These weren't just calming tricks, they prevented the tunnel vision that leads to fatal mistakes and crises. Storm navigation was brutally physical. Canoes rode waves differently when overloaded or unbalanced, so crews constantly shifted their weight like human ballast. Someone always guarded the water containers. Losing fresh water to a rogue wave meant slow death. Fish lines got reeled. And to prevent tangles, caught fish were eaten immediately rather than saved. Storms could last days, and protein helped cognition. Even vomiting had rules always over the windward side to avoid fouling the deck. The aftermath required sharp instincts. When skies cleared, exhausted crews couldn't just collapse. They had to reassess their position immediately. Navigators would compare remembered swell patterns before and after the storm, looking for discrepancies. Birds provided quick checks if frigate birds appeared unexpectedly. Land might be nearer than calculated. Fresh rainwater got collected in every available container, but drinking too much too fast after dehydration could kill you. Veterans rationed it anyway, knowing another storm might come. Surviving proved your worth. Young navigators who kept their heads during storms earned their first tattoos, permanent reminders that they'd passed the ultimate test. Those who froze or made errors got demoted to permanent bait cutters. There was no middle ground. European ships avoided typhoon seasons. Polynesians sailed through them because their navigation system accounted for chaos. The difference between fearless and reckless? Preparation so thorough that storms became just another calculation. Yet storms taught lessons no calm voyage could. They revealed which crew members would share food without being asked. They showed who could sleep sitting up while lashed to a wet deck. Most importantly, they proved whether years of memorizing wave patterns actually worked when your life depended on it. Surviving one storm made you competent. Surviving a dozen made you a navigator whose knowledge others would follow into darkness. Landfall after such trials felt different. Not just relief, but earned confidence. You'd face the ocean's worst and dictated terms. The crew walked taller, even as they stumbled ashore on stiff legs. Local villagers would see storm-torn sails and know this was no ordinary arrival. Stories would spread before the canoes were fully beached. And somewhere on that island, an apprentice navigator would hear the tailies and start memorizing wave patterns with fresh desperation, wondering if he'd ever be that strong. After weeks of ocean and sky blurring together, the first sign of land wasn't always a shape on the horizon. Sometimes it was the birds, not just any birds, but frigate birds winging their way home at dusk. These black silhouettes against the sunset meant everything. They never slept on water, so if you saw them flying purposefully in one direction, you followed. One navigator's journal describes tracking a single bird for hours, watching it grow from a speck to a clear shape as the canoe closed in on its invisible destination. Miss that clue, and you might sail right past an island hidden by the curve of the earth. Clouds told secrets too. While most clouds drift with the wind, some seem to hover in place. These often mark land. Volcanic islands create stationary clouds that cling to their peaks like hats. Low atolls make thinner, wider patches in the sky. Veterans could spot these signs from absurd distances. The real trick? Ignoring false positives. Some clouds just look like islands until you chase them for a day and find nothing. Navigators kept mental lists of which cloud types could be trusted, learned through brutal trial and error. Many old chants include lines like, "The lying cloud of the western sea," warnings about specific formations that fooled ancestors. Then, there was the smell. After weeks of salt and fish, the sudden scent of earth hit like a slap. Pandanus trees gave off a sweet, nutty odor that carried for miles. Rotting vegetation from mangrove swamps had a sharper, sulphury tang. Some navigators claimed they could identify island types by scent before seeing them. Volcanic high islands smelled different from coral atolls. Crews would stand at the bow like bloodhounds, noses lifted, waiting for that first whiff to confirm. They weren't hallucinating from hunger. Night landfalls were common. Islands often appeared first as a dim glow on clouds fires from villages, or lightning reflecting upward. Crews would debate whether it was real or their eyes playing tricks. The test was watching how the light behaved over time. Distant fires flickered differently than lightning, with a steadier rhythm. Some navigators kept burned sticks in their kits to compare smoke patterns against the horizon. False sightings crushed morale fast, nothing worse than rousing starving crewmates. For land that wasn't their dot, sound played tricks too. Waves breaking on reef systems create a low rumble that carries over open water. Navigators would dunk their heads below deck to listen through the hull, which conducted sound better than air. The terrifying version was hearing breakers at night. Without knowing how far they were getting it wrong meant sailing onto rocks. Veteran crews developed an ear for distance by counting seconds between waves hitting the hull and the boom of surf dot as land neared. Rituals kicked in. Crews would bathe in seawater to wash off the voyage's grime before touching shore. Tools got cleaned and repacked. Last bits of emergency rations were eaten, so no foreign foods contaminated the new land. Strict hierarchies re-emerged youngest. Crew members would swim ahead to scout, while elders stayed aboard. Everything was about showing respect to whatever spirits guarded that coast. Violate protocol, and your next voyage might end on those same rocks. The moment of arrival wasn't celebratory, not yet. First came the tense approach, watching for hidden reefs. Then the sprint to secure the canoe before tides shifted. Only when hulls were safely beached could relief show. Even then, veterans warned against overexcitement. Many died within sight of land by rushing into unfamiliar waters. Better to spend one more hungry night offshore than drown with feet touching sand. Island communities had strict protocols for arrivals. Strangers weren't uncommon. Polynesian histories tell of canoes appearing unexpectedly after years lost. Local navigators would quiz newcomers to prove they weren't spirits or raiders. Correct answers earned feasts. Wrong ones could mean spears. Some chants were nothing but arrival codes, lists of ancestors and islands that served as passports. Forget your genealogy, and you might lose your cargo. Physical proof of the voyage mattered. Crews brought token items, a rock from the home island, carvings from known trees to verify origins. Navigators would point out stars they'd followed as witnesses tracked movements overhead. Only when stories aligned would formal welcomes begin. These weren't just niceties. Entire migrations hinged on proving you came from somewhere real, not just drifting aimless. Celebrations lasted days when they happened. Stories swapped, marriages arranged, new plants and tools traded, but every navigator kept scanning the horizon, noting bird patterns and cloud shapes, logging details for future voyages. Even ashore, they never stopped navigating. Children would pester them with questions, already soaking up lessons for their own crossings someday. The real prize wasn't reaching land, it was leaving again successfully. Anyone could get lucky once. True masters proved it by turning around months later and hitting some pinpoint island halfway across the Pacific. That's why their knowledge was gold, why apprentices suffered through years of training. Not just to find land, but to find it reliably, again and again, until the vast ocean felt no larger than a backyard pond. Proof came not in stories, but in scars, salt cracks on hands, faded tattoos around knees where waves battered them against. Decks. A navigator's body was his logbook, every mark a chapter in routes that couldn't be erased. Young crews learned fastest by watching where veterans' eyes lingered on the horizon, which cloud shapes made them tense. The real maps weren't drawn on bark or skin, but in generations of collective memory, passed through glances and gestures no outsider could decode. Modern sailors have it easy GPS coordinates, satellite weather, EPIRB distress signals. Polynesian techniques weren't just effective, they were adaptable in ways tech can't match. Lose your instruments, and suddenly those bird patterns and cloud shapes matter again. That's why today's navigators still mix tradition with technology, keeping the old ways alive, not as history, but as insurance. The ocean hasn't changed, the stars haven't moved, and you're still just one human in a very small boat, trying to read the world's subtle signs before it's too late. Modern science has a funny way of catching up to what ancient cultures already knew. For years, Western researchers dismissed Polynesian navigation as impossible. No way could people cross thousands of miles of ocean without compasses or maps. Then GPS came along and proved them wrong. When the Hakulia canoe sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976 using nothing but traditional methods, its path matched modern charts almost perfectly. Instrument readings showed the navigators were often within 5 miles of their intended course after weeks at sea. That's like walking from New York to Boston and ending up on the right doorstep without a mapped-out scientist got curious about how this worked. Brain scans of modern Polynesian navigators show something unusual. Their spatial awareness regions light up like city skylines. Regular folks see a night sky as random dots. Navigators see highways, crossroads, and exit signs. Their brains process star movements, wave patterns, and bird behavior simultaneously, the way chess masters see entire boards at a glance. Tests prove they can maintain mental maps accurate enough to detect 1-degree course errors, something most GPS units can't do without satellites. The real kicker? They navigate better when tired. Sleep-deprived navigators in studies actually perform more accurately than rested ones. Turns out years of training rewire the brain to work differently, where a conscious thought gets in the way. European sailors needed precise instruments because they tried to calculate positions. Polynesians felt them through their bones. Western science originally mocked these techniques. Early explorers wrote, that Pacific Islanders must have just gotten lucky, drifting randomly until hitting land. Then researchers started testing the methods. They found navigators could detect islands up to 50 miles away by wave patterns alone, something physics confirms happens due to refraction. Those random bird sightings? Radio tracking shows seabirds really do fly straight home at predictable distances. Even the star paths check-out computer models prove the sequences. They memorized work as navigation routes. The Herculean Voyages embarrassed a lot of skeptics. This replica canoe has crossed the Pacific multiple times using only traditional methods. No backup GPS, no emergency sextant, just stars, waves, and a crew trained the old way. GPS logs from these trips show something surprising. Traditional navigation isn't just accurate, it's more reliable in some conditions. When storms block satellites, modern sailors panic. Navigators switch to wave reading without missing a beat. One Herculean voyage hit a week of solid overcast, no stars, no sun. They still made landfall within sight of their target by following swell patterns. Try that with a smartphone. This isn't just about history. Modern sailors are studying these techniques as backup navigation. The U.S. Navy trained some personnel in wave pattern recognition after seeing Polynesian methods work. Astronauts practice star courses similar to Pacific wayfinding. When you're in space, GPS doesn't exactly work. Even hospitals are interested. That navigator sleep research helps develop new treatments for shift workers. The cultural impact runs deeper. Young Polynesians used to see traditional knowledge as obsolete. Now schools teach star compasses alongside math. Kids learn that their ancestors weren't primitive. They were geniuses who cracked celestial navigation centuries before Europe. The Herculean Voyages sparked a revival. Today there are more active navigators than at any time in the past 200 years. At its core, this science proves something simple. Humans are better at navigation than we've been taught. You probably couldn't sail to Tahiti tomorrow, but your brain has the same hardware as those navigators. The difference is training. Polynesian methods work because they treat perception as a skill, not a given. They notice what most of us filter out the way. Certain stars feel brighter when you're nearing land. How wave sounds change near islands. That modern life dulls these senses. We follow phone maps without looking up. Sleep through weather changes. Because thermostats compensate, but the capability remains. Studies show even city dwellers can relearn directional awareness surprisingly fast, usually within weeks. It just takes paying attention differently, which explains why these techniques help with insomnia. Polynesian navigators didn't just use stars to sail, they used them to sleep. Their nighttime focused training accidentally created perfect conditions for deep rest. Tracking star movements requires the same brain state as falling asleep. Relaxed awareness. The ocean's rhythm acts like a giant metronome for human sleep cycles. Modern sleep labs confirm this wave sounds and stargazing trigger faster melatonin release than any pill. Asterisk. So what's the takeaway? Maybe that progress isn't always about new technology. Sometimes it's realizing old methods worked better than we knew. Those navigators weren't primitive, They just optimized differently. They didn't conquer the ocean. They learned its language. And as modern science keeps proving, that language is more precise than we ever imagined. Now, about applying this to your sleep tonight. You don't need to cross oceans to benefit from Polynesian navigation techniques. Those same methods that guided voyagers across thousands of miles can help you sleep tonight. Modern life bombards us with artificial light and constant noise, making sleep elusive. But the solutions aren't complicated. They're ancient. Polynesian navigators accidentally perfected sleep science centuries before melatonin supplements existed. Stargazing works better than sleeping pills for a reason. When navigators lay on their canoes tracking star paths, they weren't just plotting courses. They were triggering natural melatonin production. Looking at dim light sources like stars tells your brain it's nighttime. Try it tonight. Turn off bright lights and look at faint light sources for 20 minutes. Even city dwellers can use this. A nightlight or dim lamp works if stars aren't visible. The key is the intensity. Your phone screen is too bright, but a small LED across the room mimics starlight perfectly. Ocean recordings do more than just provide white noise. Those rhythmic wave patterns Polynesians used to navigate actually sync with human sleep cycles. Modern sleep studies show wave sounds with about 12-second intervals. The average swell timing in the Pacific help people fall asleep fastest. Many relaxation tracks get this wrong with constant crashing waves. The real magic is in the pauses. Between swells, those brief moments of near silence navigators listen for. Find recordings labeled slow ocean waves or open ocean sounds. Rather than beach surf. Your breathing already follows wave patterns. You just never noticed. Polynesian navigators timed inhalations to wave crests, exhales to troughs. This specific pattern, inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8, happens to be what sleep researchers now call the perfect breath. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system within minutes. Try it lying down. Imagine each inhale as a wave lifting your canoe, each exhale as settling into the trough. Count 4 slow breaths, then check if your eyelids feel heavier. Most people notice a difference immediately. The navigator's mindset matters more than techniques. They approach sleepless nights differently than we do. When clouds blocked stars for weeks, they didn't panic about lost sleep. They accepted it as part of the journey. Modern sleep anxiety makes insomnia worse. The Polynesian approach was to work with wakefulness until exhaustion naturally took over. Next time you can't sleep, try their method. Get up for 20 minutes of dim activity, no screens, and attempt sleep again. Repeat as needed without frustration. It's not insomnia. It's your version of night navigation. Light sleep wasn't failure to Polynesians. It was a skill. Navigators trained to sleep lightly, yet restfully, waking frequently to check their course. This polyphasic sleep pattern might actually be more natural than our modern preference for uninterrupted sleep. Instead of fighting nighttime, wakefulness, try the Polynesian approach. During night awakenings, simply observe your surroundings briefly. Stars out the window, wave sounds playing, then relax back down. No clock checking, no frustration, just a navigator's momentary course correction. Your bedroom layout could use some canoe design principles. Polynesians slept in the open, slightly chilly, with constant gentle motion. While you can't replicate ocean rocking, try these adjustments. Position your bed so you can see the window, like navigators sleeping under open skies. Use a fan for both air movement and steady sound, and keep the room cooler than you'd think. About 65 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal. Add a weighted blanket for that secure on-deck feeling without overheating. Daytime navigation. Habits improve nighttime sleep too. Polynesian apprentices practice star recognition for just 5 to 10 minutes daily until it became second nature. You can train your sleep the same way with micro practices. 1 minute of wave breathing at stoplights. 30 seconds of horizon gazing. Pick a distant object when you stand up from your desk. These tiny sensory calibrations add up to better sleep. Readiness at night. Sleep isn't just a nighttime activity. It's the culmination of how you spend your whole day. Their snack game was surprisingly advanced. Voyagers ate small amounts of coconut and dried fish before sleep, foods that stabilize blood sugar through the night. Try their version of bedtime nutrition. A tablespoon of almond butter or few slices of banana instead of sugary snacks. The fat-protein combo prevents nighttime crashes without digestion issues. Bonus if you eat it while looking at stars or listening to wave sounds. The multi-sensory experience enhances sleepiness. Modern tools can help if used wisely. While Polynesians didn't have apps, we can adapt their principles digitally. Use red light. Filters on devices after sunset. Set wave sound playlists to automatically lower in volume as night progresses. Or try stargazing apps that show accurate but dim constellations. The trick is keeping technology subservient to technique. No bright screens in bed, no frantic sleep tracking. Think of these as training wheels while you learn to navigate. Sleep naturally. The ultimate lesson isn't about specific tricks. It's about philosophy. Polynesians viewed the night as an ally, not an enemy. Clouds weren't frustrating obstructions. They were chances to practice wave navigation. Sleeplessness wasn't a failure. It was extra time to refine skills. That mental shift alone solves half our modern sleep struggles. Tonight, try approaching bedtime as a navigator would. Prepared, observant, but not forceful. Let the waves rock you when they will. Your job is just to pay attention. Tonight, transform your bed into a voyaging canoe. Start by dimming the lights, not completely dark, but enough to see faint shapes. That's your starlight. If you've got curtains, leave a crack open so moonlight can sneak in. No moon? A single salt lamp or small LED across the room works. The goal isn't to see clearly, but to recreate that hazy, open ocean darkness navigators slept under. Too bright, and your brain thinks it's daytime. Too dark, and you lose the guideposts that lie flat on your back like they did no pillows. Just a thin mat if you need it. Navigators slept this way to keep stars in view. Feel your weight distribute evenly, just as they did on wooden decks. Notice how your breath moves your ribs differently in this position. That's your first lesson. Embody awareness. If your mattress is too soft, put a board or thick book underneath to mimic the canoe's firmness. You want to feel solid support, not sinking. Start counting constellations, but not the way you count sheep. Pick 4 bright stars in your darkened room, maybe a faint nightlight, a glow-in-the-dark sticker, the LED on your router. Trace imaginary lines between them like a navigator connecting dots in the sky. When your mind wanders, it will gently bring it back to those points. Polynesian apprentices did this for hours. You only need 5 minutes to feel the effect. Breathe like the ocean. Inhale for 4 seconds, as if a wave is lifting your canoe. Hold for 7, that's the crest. Exhale for 8 as the wave drops. Away. This isn't just breathing. It's wave pattern recognition. Navigators time their rest to these rhythms. Too complicated? Just match your out-breath to the sound of ocean waves if you're using a recording. The key is the pause between. Breaths, that moment of stillness between swells. Let thoughts drift like clouds. When worries come, and they will picture them as passing cumulus. Navigators watched clouds for signs, but didn't chase them. Observe your thoughts the same way. Ah, there's the work email cloud. There's the tomorrow's meeting cloud. Don't engage, just note their shapes moving past. Traditional wayfinding chants have a cadence for this monotone. Repetitive lines that occupy just enough mind space to quiet other noise. Try humming one note softly if your brain won't. Shut off. Cool the room down. Polynesians slept in open-air canoes where temperatures drop sharply at night. Your body sleeps best around 65 degrees Fahrenheit cool, enough to need light covering. If your feet get cold, wear thin socks, but avoid heavy pajamas. That slight chill mimics ocean winds and helps trigger sleepiness. A fan does double duty, hear white noise, plus air movement. Position it to barely graze your skin, like a trade wind across the deck. Tune your ears. Navigators could pinpoint direction by wave sounds against the hull. Play an ocean track with slow, distant breakers, not crashing surf. The pauses between waves are crucial. That's when they listened for refracted patterns. If you dislike water sounds, try fan noise or rain, but keep it irregular. Steady drones don't work as well. The volume should be just loud enough to hear if you focus, but easy to ignore otherwise. Not rest your hands on your stomach. Navigators often slept with one hand touching the canoe to sense vibrations. Your version. Fingertips lightly touching your abdomen to monitor breath. When you catch yourself thinking, those fingers will feel the tension first. It's an early warning system. Clenched stomach means you've lost focus on the voyage. Sense matter. Polynesians had the salt of the sea, the oil of coconut, the musk of damp pandanus mats. You don't need a fancy diffuser, a dab of coconut oil on your wrists, or a few drops of seawater-scented spray on your sheets. Avoid strong florals. Think seaweed, rain, green leaves. One whiff should barely register, like catching land on the wind after weeks at sea dot when sleep doesn't come. Do what navigators did. Get up quietly. Not to check your phone, but to reset. Sit on the floor for 5 minutes practicing your breathing before trying again. They pace the deck briefly when restless. You're just adapting their method to apartment living. The goal isn't forcing sleep, but maintaining the routine until your body surrenders. Morning matters too. Navigators woke with the stars still visible, what we now call circadian dawn. Try rising early enough to catch that pre-sunrise gloom. Those first moments of half-light were when they checked their course. Your version: step outside barefoot for 30 seconds, or stand by an open window while making coffee. Note the temperature. The sky's color recalibrates your internal clock better than any alarm. The secret wasn't in any one technique, but in consistency. They didn't sleep this way occasionally. It was their normal. Start with just the breathing and darkness. Tonight, add one element each week until your bedroom feels like a well-equipped voyaging canoe. You're not playing sailor. You're borrowing centuries of sleep science perfected by people who couldn't afford insomnia when land was 500 miles away in any direction. Before we wrap up, there's one last Polynesian sleep trick worth mentioning: their approach to dreams. They didn't just sleep through them, they used them. Tomorrow's dreams might solve problems you're stuck on today. But that's another story. Polynesian navigators didn't just dream. They worked while sleeping. Dreams weren't random brain noise to them. They were critical navigation aids. Modern science scoffs at this, but these voyagers made course corrections based on nighttime. Visions, and lived to tell about it. Imagine banking your life on a dream about cloud shapes madness to us, routine to them. They trained to remember dreams in painful detail. Apprentices practiced recalling specific elements, colors of fish. In dreams, directions birds flew, precise star formations. Some kept dream journals carved into bamboo strips. Forget writing down. Had a weird dream about falling. These were technical reports. A navigator might wake mid-voyage and announce, "We need to adjust 15 degrees west." My grandmother appeared, with a frigate bird pointing left. Crews obeyed without question. Certain dreams carried more weight. Dreams featuring stars or celestial events took top priority. A moon eclipse vision might override daytime observations. Animal dreams came next. Sharks meant danger ahead. Dolphins signaled calm waters. Ordinary dreams about home or past events got ignored unless they contained specific navigation symbols. Modern dream analysts would call this cherry picking. Polynesians called it not dying at sea. They didn't interpret dreams alone. Upon reaching land, navigators described significant dreams to elders who'd cross-reference them with known symbols. There were standards 3 generations might agree that dreaming of a turtle with a cracked shell always meant hidden reefs nearby. This prevented personal biases from causing disasters. Imagine a GPS that required committee approval before recalculating your route. That was their system. Dreams provided early warnings. Multiple navigators reporting similar visions triggered alerts long before physical signs appeared. One documented case describes 7 canoes abandoning a route because several navigators dreamed of upside-down birds. They later learned a typhoon wiped out the path they'd planned to take. Coincidence? Maybe. But when your alternative is drowning, you heed the warning. Celestial dreams got special treatment. Navigators believed certain stars visited them in sleep, imparting knowledge about their current position. These weren't vague impressions. They claimed to receive precise, angular measurements about celestial bodies. Modern astronomers find this laughable until you consider they hit tiny islands thousands of miles apart regularly. Maybe the stars were talking. Dream incubation was a practiced skill. Before critical voyages, navigators followed rituals to induce helpful dreams, fasting from certain foods, sleeping in specific positions, chanting particular phrases. Some rubbed stingray oil on their temples. Others buried dream requests in coconut husks at sacred spots. These weren't superstitions, so much as targeting the subconscious with surgical precision. The mechanics were straightforward. At sunset, the navigator would voice a question. Which star leads to Rarotonga? Then they'd sleep with one hand on a carved figurine representing their destination. Upon waking, immediate recall was paramount. Hesitation meant the message got distorted. Elders warned that lingering in bed after such dreams allowed sea demons to steal the information. Practical tip or psychological hack? You decide. Kids trained with dream games. Parents gave children patterned sleeping mats and told them to bring back stories about the designs from their dreams. Teens competed to recall exact sequences. Remember 5 fish swimming east, beat 3 birds flying west. This built dream memory muscles early, turning what we dismiss as imagination into a precision tool. Storm dreams saved lives. Multiple accounts describe navigators dreaming of particular wave formations days before encountering them, allowing crews to prepare. The dreams reportedly matched reality so closely that crews could pre-lash cargo exactly where needed. Modern meteorology struggles with this accuracy, even with satellite data. Yet these visions occurred without technology. Dream sharing maintained course corrections. During long voyages, crews gathered at dawn to share notable dreams while memories were fresh. The navigator synthesized these into a composite picture: 3 dreams about high waves, plus 2 about rain equaled pending storms. This crowdsourced forecasting puts modern weather apps to shame. False signs were weeded out systematically. Young navigators quickly learned that overly emotional dreams, fearful visions, erotic encounters got disregarded unless they contained specific navigation symbols. Elders taught that panic dreams originated from the gut, not the ancestors. So if you woke sweating from a nightmare about falling, you kept it to yourself unless sharks appeared in it. The key was utility over meaning. Polynesians cared little. Why a dream occurred only whether it helped navigation. A recurring nightmare about drowning would be ignored unless it coincided with actual sailing errors. Conversely, a pleasant dream about flying fish became critical if it matched known symbols for land proximity. This pragmatic approach prevented mystical navel gazing. Modern parallels exist. Lucid dreaming techniques resemble their dream control methods. Athletes now use visualized rehearsals, similar to Polynesian dream practices. Even science acknowledges that sleep consolidates memory and skills something navigators exploited deliberately. The main difference? They trusted dreams enough to bet their lives on them regularly, ... and one ... Of course, skeptics have explanations. Maybe dream symbols were just subconscious processing of subtle daytime observations. Perhaps shared cultural expectations created self-fulfilling prophecies. But when your canoe arrives precisely at a tiny island after weeks at sea following, just a hunch, philosophical debates seem irrelevant. What's undeniable is the results. These techniques guided settlement across 10 million square miles of ocean, the greatest navigation feat in human history. Modern recreations using traditional methods continue to succeed where theory says they shouldn't, maybe dismissing. Their dream navigation says more about our limitations than there's ... The real lesson isn't about accepting dreams as truth. It's about recognizing that human perception has depths we've barely explored. Polynesians treated the mind as another navigational instrument, something to be calibrated, tested, and trusted like the stars themselves. We've traded that holistic awareness for GPS accuracy, gaining precision, but losing something harder. To define ... as we end this segment, consider how you remember dreams tonight. Not as random firings of a tired brain, but as potential messages waiting to be decoded. They likely won't guide you to unknown islands, but they might help navigate tomorrow's challenges with surprising clarity. The Polynesians would nod, knowingly at that. They'd also tell you to write it down before breakfast, or risk forgetting something important. Polynesian kids didn't learn navigation from textbooks. They absorbed it through bedtime stories, whispered under the stars. Parents didn't recite fairy tales, they told stories about the Southern Cross and Maui's fishing hook, also known as Scorpius. Each constellation came with a memorable tale that served a practical purpose. The Pleiades weren't just pretty stars, they were Matareki, the signal for voyaging season to begin. Kids could point them out before they could reliably tie their LOINCLOTHS. The educational approach was simple but ruthless. Games doubled as training exercises. Ever played Guess That Wave while bobbing in a canoe? Polynesian children did. Elders would challenge them to predict swell patterns or identify faint bird calls. Get it right, you earned a piece of fruit. Get it wrong, you'd be bailing water for hours. Nighttime wasn't for screen time, it was for spotting star sequences. While others slept, modern parents fret about too much screen time. Polynesian parents worried about their kids not reading the ocean properly. They had games to fix that. One involved floating bits of wood in tidal pools, predicting where currents would take them. Another had kids identify fish species by the ripples they left on the surface. Toss a pebble into a pond today, and most kids watch the splash. Polynesian children watched the ripple patterns like it held the answers to a test, because it literally did. Night fishing trips served as pop quizzes. Parents didn't just teach kids to catch fish, they taught them to read phosphorescent trails in the water. Certain sparkle patterns meant reefs were near. Others signaled deep water. Miss the clues, and you went hungry. Get good at it, and you might live longer than your cousins. Simple incentives work better than gold stars. The constellations they memorized weren't random. The Southern Cross functioned as their compass needle. Orion's belt pointed to known island chains like signposts. The pointers Alpha and Beta Centauri marked the way to specific latitudes. Kids learned these before they learned to count past 10. European children memorized nursery rhymes. Polynesian children memorized celestial highways. One helps you sleep. The other keeps you from drowning. Star knowledge was strictly utilitarian. The story of Hina and the moon wasn't just mythology. It explained lunar navigation cycles. Legends about the demigod Maui doubled as mnemonic devices for remembering seasonal star paths. Even scary stories had purpose. Tales of fishermen. Getting lost reinforced why you should never confuse Antares with Arcturus. Screw up those two stars as an adult, and you'd become the subject of future cautionary tales. Physical training started early too. Toddlers balanced on rocking logs to develop sea legs. Preteens practiced tying complex knots blindfolded. Teenagers endured swell tests, hours floating in canoes, learning to distinguish wave patterns by feel alone. Modern kids get trophies for participation. Polynesian kids got survival skills and the occasional concussion. The contrasts with modern childhood are stark. Today's average 10-year-old can operate a tablet, but couldn't find north without GPS. Polynesian children could navigate by, taste literally. They learned that fresh water seeping from islands created subtle changes in ocean flavor. Stick your tongue in seawater today, and you'll just taste salt. Their ancestors could detect land dozens of miles away this way. Observation. Drills were constant. Adults would hide objects in tide pools and time how fast kids spotted them. They'd tweak constellations in star charts and see who noticed inconsistencies. Forget I spy. This was spot the navigational error or we all die. The pressure created unbelievable attention to detail. Modern studies show average humans ignore 90% of their visual field. Polynesian navigators noticed when a single new star appeared in their peripheral vision. The system wasn't perfect. Plenty of kids washed out or chose farming instead. But those who stuck with it developed superhuman environmental awareness. Toss a traditional navigator into a modern forest, and they'll likely outperform seasoned hunters at tracking. Drop them in Manhattan, and they'd probably still find north by scanning slivers of visible sky between skyscrapers. Certain constellations mattered more than others. The Pleiades marked season changes. The great bird, modern-day Cygnus, pointed to northern routes. Corvus signaled southerly paths. Kids didn't just learn these. They practiced drawing them in the sand with their eyes closed. European explorers wrote about meeting children who could chart accurate star maps from memory. They assumed it was magic rather than years of targeted training. Modern attempts to replicate this show how much we've lost. Schools in Hawaii now teach star compass classes, but it's elective, not survival. Kids learn constellations through apps instead of stories. The sugar content is there, but the nutritional value is lacking. Some programs are trying harder, taking students on overnight canoe trips, forcing them to navigate without phones. The results? Kids still get bored halfway through and ask for Wi-Fi. There's hope, though. The same kids who can't sit through a night of stargazing will spend hours mastering complex video game maps. The pattern recognition skills are still there, just misdirected. Some educators are hacking this by turning navigation into games. Apps now teach Polynesian star paths using RPG mechanics. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. The real lesson isn't about going back in time. It's about recognizing how efficient the old methods were. Polynesian children learned organic chemistry by processing coconut oil. They mastered physics through wave dynamics. They developed memory palaces using star charts. The system produced genius-level navigators without classrooms or homework. All it took was constant, purposeful exposure starting from birth. Today's equivalent might be raising kids with coding puzzles instead of bedtime stories, or teaching math through carpentry rather than worksheets. The medium doesn't matter as much as the immersion. Polynesian navigation wasn't just a subject, it was the backdrop against which everything else unfolded. Stars weren't decoration. They were the ceiling of their childhood classroom. That legacy hasn't completely vanished. Visit the Marshall Islands today, and you'll find grandparents still teaching wave patterns to toddlers. In New Zealand, Maori communities run night sky kindergartens. Hawaii's charter schools incorporate wayfinding into science curricula. The methods adapt, but the core idea remains. Childhood isn't just preparation for life. It's where essential life skills take root. Modern science backs this up. Studies show kids learn best through stories and hands-on experience. Neural pathways develop faster with multi-sensory input. Yet we've somehow decided that sitting still for 6 hours a day is superior to learning by doing. The Polynesians would find this hilariously misguided. Their primitive education system accidentally aligned with cutting-edge cognitive science. The revival of Polynesian navigation started with a question: could these ancient techniques actually work today? In 1976, the Hokulea canoe proved they could, sailing from Hawaii to Tahiti using only traditional methods. That voyage sparked something unexpected, a cultural renaissance that's still growing. Today's navigators aren't just preserving history. They're rewriting what modern wayfinding looks like. The Polynesian Voyaging Society trains new crews who make star compasses with smartphone apps, proving old knowledge doesn't have to die to stay useful. Schools have taken notice. In Hawaii and New Zealand, kids learn star paths alongside algebra. Star compass diagrams hang next to periodic tables in some classrooms. Teachers don't present it as primitive science. They frame it as advanced pattern recognition that preceded GPS by centuries. Students who struggle with equations often excel at memorizing wave patterns, realizing for the first time they might be smart in ways tests don't measure. The lesson plans look nothing like traditional chants around a fire, but the core idea remains. The natural world is something to understand, not just pass through. The Hokulea's worldwide voyages turned heads. When it completed a globe-spanning journey in 2017, using predominantly traditional navigation, marine biologists and physicists came to observe. They expected charming cultural theater. They found precision mathematics. The canoe's path later. verified by GPS logs, showed deviations of less than 30 miles over 1,000-mile stretches comparable to instrument-based navigation in the age of sail. Modern navigators admit they use GPS now, but only as backup, like checking your work in pencil. Participation numbers tell the story. Where once only a handful of elders kept these skills alive, there are now hundreds of trained navigators across Polynesia. Voyaging clubs have wait lists. Night navigation workshops sell out months in advance. The demand isn't just from Pacific. Islanders, either NASA engineers and Silicon Valley programmers, sign up, curious about alternative ways to process spatial data. Some come for the history, but stay for the unexpected side effects: improved sleep, sharper focus, even relief from motion sickness. The methods have evolved where necessary. Traditional star compasses now include adjustments for axial precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts star positions over centuries. Ancient chants about wave patterns get paired with oceanographic charts showing refraction patterns. Navigators use waterproof notebooks instead of memory alone. These aren't corruptions of tradition. They're the same process that kept the knowledge accurate for generations, updating while preserving core principles. Skeptics wondered if revival was just nostalgia. The ocean answered that question. During Hercules' worldwide voyage, storms knocked out electronics multiple times. Crews reverted to traditional methods for days at a stretch, hitting waypoints with eerie accuracy. Fishermen across the Pacific report using cloud reading when radar fails. Even sailors with modern instruments admit they've used wave patterns to correct GPS errors. The old ways aren't just cultural artifacts. They're functional backup systems in an increasingly fragile technological world. Cultural impacts run deep. Young Polynesians who once saw their heritage as irrelevant now wear traditional navigation tattoos with pride. Elders who worried about dying languages suddenly have grandchildren begging to learn star chants. The revival even affected naming. Trends more babies now bear names like Ho'okel, navigator, or Hoku, star. What began as a sailing technique became something more, a way to rebuild identity in a globalized world. Challenges remain. True mastery still takes decades, and modern life doesn't easily accommodate the timeline. Some traditions resist adaptation. Few today follow the strict pre-voyage celibacy rules navigators once observed. Funding is perpetually scarce. Voyaging canoes cost millions to maintain. Yet the momentum continues, fueled by each new generation that looks at the night sky and sees not just stars, but possibilities. The bedtime connection isn't metaphorical. Modern navigators report sleeping better at sea than on land, their circadian rhythms syncing perfectly with the ocean's pulse. Sleep scientists studying Hercules crews found their melatonin levels rise and fall with moonlight exposure, unlike the artificial light-disrupted patterns most people experience. Some sleep clinics now prescribe voyage simulation stargazing before bed, coupled with wave sound recordings for chronic insomnia patients. The results are promising enough that researchers are exploring broader applications. This revival matters beyond cultural preservation. In a world of constant digital distraction, Polynesian navigation offers an unexpected antidote. The focused attention it requires, what psychologists now call flow state, proves increasingly rare in modern life. Teens who train in wayfinding describe feeling calmer, more present. Their night-focused routines incidentally reduce screen time, aligning sleep patterns with natural light. The techniques that once guided canoes now help people navigate something just as treacherous: contemporary life's overwhelming currents. The future looks hybrid. Traditional navigation won't replace GPS, but it's carved out a permanent niche. Ocean-going ships now carry cultural navigators alongside radar technicians. University astronomy departments collaborate with native wayfinders to document celestial knowledge. Even the military studies these methods as potential backup systems. What began as an effort to save dying knowledge became something more valuable. Proof that ancient and modern can coexist productively. As you lie in bed tonight, consider this. The same star patterns that guided Polynesians remain overhead. The ocean still moves in predictable rhythms. The disconnect isn't with nature, it's with our attention. Traditional navigation's real gift might be reminding us that the world makes sense when you know how to look at it. You don't need a canoe to benefit, just the willingness to occasionally unplug and observe. In that sense, the voyaging revival isn't just happening on oceans. It's happening anytime someone looks up from their phone and really sees the night sky. The Polynesians never conquered the ocean. They learned to listen to it. That's the real lesson here. Tonight, try lying in bed like a navigator on a voyage. Turn off the bright lights. Let your breathing match the rhythm of ocean waves playing softly in the background. Notice how your body relaxes when you sync with these ancient patterns. See those faint glows in your darkened room? Treat them like stars. Breathe like the swells are rocking you. Don't force sleep, let it find you, just as land eventually found those canoes. Maybe you'll wake up feeling more rested. Maybe not. But it's worth a try. Sweet dreams and calm seas to you.